understanding tools, understanding the job they're used for, and understanding how to use them, right? And you got to have those things. It's to employ it correctly.
CJ, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, I ran into you, met you for the first time a few months back at Gunsight, a place that you're at a lot. So didn't have a chance to really talk to you. Been really looking forward to sitting down. You have a lot of experience with training, and I really want this to be an episode heavy on that. You are the training coordinator for the Surefire Institute, and many people know that. But what people may not know is your background. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. I know you're a lifelong shooter and hunter. So how were you first introduced to firearms and hunting?
Wow. So something I take a lot of pride in. I grew up with my parents, blue collar, working a lot. So I was raised by my grandparents. My grandpa was a gun guy, and I grew up in the Utah area. Started with shooting a BB gun in the backyard on B8 targets. And I learned how to master the fundamentals of marksmanship with a rifle from the age of 5. So for me, this has been kind of I would say, lifelong journey and obsession. Since that point, the hunting was small game mostly where I grew up. My dad was not much of a hunter, more than he was a fisherman. And so I actually spent the time after my military service learning and obsessing over hunting. So that's something for on the big game spectrum is what's new to me for that. But yeah, so I was obsessed with military stuff as a young age. I think Grandpa showing me Rambo movies and 80s action movies kind of set the tone for my life. And also video games, getting a PlayStation 1 and playing a game called Metal Gear Solid, which kind of like set the tone for the rest of my life on gun stuff and tactical stuff and, typical American pop culture.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Couple questions, brother. How old are you?
I'm 36.
36. And here's the big one. How tall are you?
I'm 6'6".
6'6". All right.
Well,
you don't look as big here, bro. But when I met you in person, I remember looking up. So
yeah,
very cool, man.
Or most of the time I tell people I'm too tall because I get the question often. But the genetic bloodline from which mine comes from is large, tall people. So, and I'm grateful to have it. I'm not complaining.
Heck yeah, very cool. You mentioned military service. You were you are a Marine Corps combat veteran. Talk a little bit about your time in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, so I joined the Marine Corps out of Salt Lake City in 2009. I thought I was going to be a combat engineer. I got the rude awakening in boot camp that I was going to be a utilities engineer. So yeah, I joined the Marine Corps. This is 2009. So I'm watching a lot of Fallujah videos and Marines, in Iraq and having a hell of a time. And being the young man I was, obsessed with that culture, it was time for me to do something. So I joined the Marine Corps, like I said. Thought I was going to be a combat engineer. I grew up doing a lot of construction, so the sell of demolition and construction sold me pretty hard. I got the rude awakening in boot camp where they read me my MOS, which still is a small chip on my shoulder today, which is an 1171, which is a water support technician, utilities engineer. So I don't know if you've ever seen the movie In the Army Now. My job was to purify water. I did that job for a small point of time. Most of the time when I was in Afghanistan, I was with Bravo Company engineers out of Combat Logistics Battalion 7. We did route clearance. So I was their bastard, my last name being Cowan. They called me Conan. And I ended up humping a 240 Golf across Afghanistan in the southern Helmand province and searching for IEDs and doing some of our own controlled demolition and shooting APOBs down roads. And it was the best and worst summer of my life as a immature 21-year-old young man. So
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
I can imagine. Very cool, man. And then you're also a competitive shooter, USPSA and Steel Challenge, right?
Yeah. So we've got a really great competitive club here where I live in Flagstaff. the range just got bought by a company. They call it Prevail Training now, which is a great facility up here at the high elevation of 7,000 feet in Arizona. But they host USPSA and Steel Challenge, which I did for a while in that. And I'm a high B class shooter. I focus on the fundamentals of marksmanship and, as I would like to say, keeping my sword sharp for what my reality is, which is self-defense. So my ego bleeds on the score sheet because I'm not willing to do things that take away from, I think, the greater picture in self-defense. For me, I think USPSA is a great shooting metric for weapons handling and marksmanship. But I also think that there should be a gunfighter's mentality on how you should approach that as competition. And I would probably not even dare to call it training or practice.
Dude, I could not agree more with what you just said. I think that's hugely important. A lot of the tactical shooters, partly because they're probably just not that good, will dismiss competition shooting. That's not realistic and everything else. And my background's law enforcement, so I saw that a lot. But I think nowadays many people are realizing that, it's not a direct one-to-one transfer of skill from competition to shooting. There are a lot of things that are helpful, but I think being a self-defense minded shooter, as you are, that it's absolutely critical to stay true to your own training goals, right? We're not going to fudge things and do things that don't make sense tactically just to get a better score. And I think if you want to be elite in competition, then that's sort of a concession that you'll have to make in order to really be ultra competitive.
I think that you can be a A-class shooter every day of the week in USPSA without obsessing over movements and transitions. I think that I know some gentlemen. There's a local U.S. Marshal who's a former recon Marine. Man is trained and just a wonderful human being, and he's an A-class shooter. But also he's on the Special Operations Group for the U.S. Marshals, and he's doing some legitimate stuff. But even he will tell me, I think the return on this, for me to learn explosive movements and target transitions and muzzling down range with the gun up doesn't really help me for my job, which he trains in his duty gear. When I go out, I look like my everyday normal clothing. Everything I do comes from, inside the waistband. I'm an appendix carry type of guy. I keep the gun at the low ready between target transitions and moving. I keep my hit standards to a higher 6x6 up on the USPSA target. So I try to have what I would dare say a gunfighter's mentality to going out to this competition and trying to practice the things that I preach during the time. So I think the two things can coexist. But my ego doesn't get wrapped around, I'm not an A, I'm not an M, I'm not a GM, therefore I don't know shit.
No, that's cool, dude. And I see the opposite too. A lot of times, like someone's, their real world of work is concealed carry, but yet they go to the range and they have a 5-inch barreled pistol with a mag well and a bunch of spare mags and stuff. And it's like, it's not that training is worthless, but it could be a lot more meaningful if you used your carry gun, if you're training to be proficient at concealed carry. So
and I think one of the biggest things that people can do is understand the terminology of what is training, what is practice, and what competition can be. And I think a lot of the individuals in the world that are gun guys or shooters or competition shooters will consider that as training and practice, which I do not. And I wouldn't want to train or practice the things that I do in a competition for the self-defense side of the spectrum, my context where I exist. So I think that if you want to learn training and you want to, practice that training, you need to have the mindset, the mentality of being a gunfighter or, self-defense, as a civilian in my context in the world that we live in today.
Yeah. And I'm sure you would agree, being both an instructor and a very prolific student. I want to talk about some of the instructors you've trained with because it's pretty impressive. But I think you would agree as well that you're not going to anchor skills in a 2 or 3 day class or even a 5 day class. It's like you're going to go there, figure out what you need to work on. I'm a big note taker at classes. Like, hopefully I'm not missing stuff because I'm always trying to pay attention and multitask and take notes.
Absolutely.
Because I know when I get home, dude, I'm going to have to revisit that over and over and over to really anchor those skills that were taught in the class. And that's regardless of how simple the material seems and also how good the instructor is. It's like, it doesn't matter, dude. You still need repetitions. And even though we're always looking for the easiest way to do something and the easiest way to teach other people to do something, under duress, things that seem easy aren't.
Really taking a class, as from what we understand, most of my work is about the brain and neural pathways and optimization. And for what we know today, your brain can really gather about an hour of something new and maybe 15 to 20 solid minutes of that. And then it takes 3 sleep cycles to create the connection. And then you have to keep building on that to myelinate that connection and build basically a conduit around it to get it to start working faster. The hard part is in the world that we live in today, most classes that you take just for the sake of the calendar and time and life is a multiple day event, a 5-day event. And it can be very hard to retain things that we learn in these classes unless we've been, sticking our nose in these books or sticking our brains in the general area. And I think what I have found as an instructor, or I would never dare to call myself an expert at anything, I'll always be a student, is that if I can gather a little bit from everywhere I go, then I can start making the bigger and broader picture of the connections in the brain. So, for example, I just took a Masada Yub class. It was the Deadly Force instructor class. Phenomenal class. They are 10+ hour days. It is 5 days long. I felt like I drank from a fire hose every single day. And so I'm making notes and notes and notes and highlighting and underlining things and trying to revisit them every day. And I think I gathered and gained about, at least 90% of the class. But then I thought to myself that I was like, well, I've been spending years on this subject. And the little bit of nuggets that I was able to pull out every day are the learning. But if you are an individual and you know anything about deadly force or the law or the court, disparity of, like, even just disparity of force, just what does that really mean and how do you apply that? And
a lot of people, CJ, you'll hear that term in certain courses, or another one like that is awareness. So an instructor will hammer home the importance of being aware, but they won't put that in any kind of context. It's just lip service. They're not actually addressing those things.
Sure.
Mass is a wealth of knowledge. I filmed with him several years ago on a television show that we did, and it was talking about legal aspects of self-defense. And I don't know that I've ever filmed with anyone who virtually every single take was one take.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the dude knows what he's talking about. He's really articulate. And before we leave this point, you mentioned myelination, which is something that in the last few years I've really been researching as well. I think it's the missing link in a lot of in learning, period. And I think that if people have some kind of understanding of how we build skill, that it can really benefit them in every class that they do. So the majority of the time when I teach a class, I do teach a small block on myelination.
Yes.
And I teach that at the beginning of the course because during the course, hopefully as an instructor, I'm adhering to those principles of building myelination, and I'll point it out to the students. You'll notice here I'm going very slow. That's what you want to do initially. But it's funny because, in the online world we live in, everybody has an opinion. And the second you talk about doing slow motion practice, for instance, people are like, going slow only teaches you how to go slow. It's like, dude, that's how we learn skill. It's not that we're going to go slow forever, but when you're learning, you want to learn the technique correctly. And that's not some high speed scientific thing that has to be called myelination. That's just called, that's how humans learn shit.
100%. 100%. When the training industry comes around to understanding optimization of the brain, I think things will get a lot better. But then the reality is most people can take a day out of their life, which is probably really 2 days out of their life if there's travel on top of it, or 3, to try to gather something. But this is where practice, daily practice and dry practice, and whatever you're trying to practice comes into play. And if you can spend 15 to 20 minutes a day doing that, especially when weapons handling and marksmanship, you're going to skyrocket above your peer group that only goes to the range once a week. And if you can even get to the range once a week to do live fire practice on top of your daily practice, you're going to see a great return on your actual practice.
Yeah.
So to understand the brain, to understand optimization, to understand the way we really work, I think then you can once you identify that, whatever your problems are, or whatever you know yourself, and whatever you're trying to work on to become better, you can then identify those steps.
Yeah, very well stated, brother. And you have, like I mentioned earlier, a quite an impressive training resume. Just some of the people you've trained with, I know, are Sentinel Concepts, Steve Fisher, he's been on the podcast. Cougar Mountain Solution, Eric Gelhaus, buddy of mine, he's been on the podcast.
Love Eric Gelhaus.
Yeah, he's a good dude. And then you got ShivWorks, right? Craig Douglas, you've trained with him. Really kind of a trendsetter dude as well. Done a lot for the industry for sure. And Gunsight. We should mention Gunsight. You've trained at Gunsight a lot. You received expert, they call it the E-ticket, right? The expert certification in 250, 350, and 499. So that's pretty impressive. I have a lot of training. I mean, I was a firearms instructor for years and years, and I had taken many iterations of the 250 course in the past, but they were like sort of abbreviated. At one of the times it was filming for Guns and Ammo TV. So we filmed kind of like all the segments that were included in a 250 course, but very abbreviated, obviously. Yeah. But I finally took my first actual 250 course a few months ago. I think it's when I saw you there at Gunsight. Yeah. And then I got the e-ticket for the 250, which is, I should with my training and everything, but I can imagine it's a little tougher in the other courses, the more advanced courses. For those who aren't familiar, Gunsight offers a 250 pistol course, which is great for anybody. You and I are both experienced shooters. I don't know how experienced you were when you took that, but I would imagine pretty darn experienced. And it's still absolutely valuable. Are there things that you are going to know if you're experienced? Yes, but they're explaining it in a way that is still going to be beneficial to you. And like, I don't know who said this, but it's pretty profound. Just because something's boring doesn't mean you're good at it. We all, the basics, I got that down, I already understand that. Do you really though? You know what I mean? Do you understand that to the point that you're going to be able to do that with a degree of automaticity in a real self-defense situation?
Absolutely. When I got about every expert I got at Gunsight, I'm a boob, so I about cried because of the honor and the lineage it means to me. My mentor is Andy Stanford. If you don't know who Andy Stanford is, he wrote Surgical Speed Shooting and Fight at Night. I call him the Empire Strikes Back Yoda. He is the crazy guy in the hut, but his intelligence level is off the charts and his perspectives to think and make connections. And he in the 80s and 90s went to Gunsight and got an expert in pistol, rifle, and shotgun from Cooper. And now I'm at Gunsight and I'm representing my mentor and I'm taking the class and these things. And I tried my best, and I'm like, man, that was good enough for me. And when they gave me an expert, I was like sucking the tears back just because it meant so much. And I didn't feel worthy. I think the imposter syndrome is still quite there. And then it's
I didn't realize it, but it's a pretty small percentage of folks that get the expert certification. So yeah, that's something to take pride in. And it took me doing a lot better the last day than the day before, I'll tell you, because man, sometimes when I get in the shoot house, I revert back to like
Uh,
I'm on a tactical team mode and I start, you know what I mean? I start going way too fast. I start having the wrong mindset.
yeah,
And I have to consciously tell myself, dude, you're not a cop and you do not have a team of guys with you. You have to have different tactics and
yes,
you have to, it's a different animal, man. I mean, a lot of the stuff, it's kind of like we mentioned with competition. A lot of the stuff is still applicable, but you have to understand what's not, you know what I mean? And you have to tailor that to your own
yeah.
needs for sure.
You have to have the mindset and the decision-making ability to apply whatever the context is of what you're doing and who's involved to then develop whatever the tactics that you need in that thought process at that time. And that can be hard to do. But it's I think it's a great journey for those that come from different backgrounds, law enforcement, like military, and then have to return to what is your daily context of life now, and then figure out for you what is the best course of action to solve a problem.
Absolutely. You know, another thing that stood out when I was looking at your sort of, not resume, but your experience
Mm.
is some executive protection stuff. Talk a little bit about your experience in that field.
Yeah. So post Marine Corps, kind of lost, looking for something to do. I had a roommate of mine. His name's Derek. He's a wonderful human being. He's currently a police officer for Las Vegas Metro. But we were both college students, and he discovered an executive protection course through Sec4 International for their HTTPS class that was actually done out of Miracosta College, get college credit for it, and they took our GI Bill for it. So he's like, we should make a small shift for a little while and go to this
Heck
class.
yeah.
And it ended up being 13 weeks. And
Wow.
it was a very demanding course. We did the whole spectrum of events there. And amongst the class, the community was phenomenal, meaning the students, other veterans, other GWOT veterans, all of us kind of trying to figure out what we're going to do. That class taught me a lot of good skills that I didn't have prior. And being our own protection agent, number one, but number two, I really learned how to shoot a handgun there. Prior to that, I mean, when I got back from Afghanistan, I was 21. I went out and bought a Beretta 96 A1 because I felt like the Marine Corps has a Beretta. It's good enough for me. I bought it in the 40. That's just to let you know I didn't know anything. And I shot the piss out of that gun, and I was hitting a silhouette, but like the concept of precision marksmanship wasn't in the brain yet. If I was putting rounds in the head of the silhouette, I thought that was okay. Somewhere around the chest area, I thought that was okay. It wasn't until I went to this executive protection course that I kind of started thinking about tactical anatomy different, because it was presented to me in that way, but also precision shooting. And everybody ran iron sights in this, so using irons, and we shot a whips qualification course. I think I came out of that class being in the top 10 of shooters. And that's really where my journey took off on trying to master the pistol and fighting with the pistol. But other than that, man, a lot of driving, a lot of advanced work, scouting, PCCC is just a really, really great class. And I think if anybody found an executive protection course that was a legit course that could teach you some skills, and you don't even have to be an executive protection agent. You could be your own or your family's. What a great class to take. I would encourage everybody to do so. I did not do anything with it. I did not take any jobs. I actually did do an interview for Larry Flint when he was for Hustler.
Yeah.
But after the first interview, and being a young, immature Marine, post Marine Corps, I was like, this probably isn't the best life decision for me. And after that, I shortly fell into building trophy trucks, believe it or not, and race cars in Temecula, California. And so, and that was a couple of years spent learning how to weld and doing some stuff around the Lake Elsinore track and through Lucas Oil races. And I think that was a weird, I've had a lot of life, and that was another weird brief deviation of it.
Very cool, man.
Yeah.
So how long have you been now with the Surefire Institute?
I've been at Surefire Institute now for 2.5 years.
Okay. And for those who don't know, I'll speak from my experience. The Surefire Institute is sort of the go-to source for low light operations. And I think that they set the standard for military and law enforcement and subsequently for private citizens. Like if you take Joe Blow's low light course, if it's good, if it's based on sound principles, chances are that goes right back to the Surefire Institute because they sort of codified low light techniques and tactics. And that's something that I think that a lot of people, they think because they have a flashlight, they're going to be good to go. Yeah. They think because they may know, the Harry's technique and the FBI technique and such, that's all they need to know. But I took a class at the Surefire Institute to become a low light instructor for law enforcement. And I was already teaching that stuff to our cops. And it's stuff that I had learned sort of third hand or second hand. And when I went to the Surefire Institute, it wasn't that I learned that everything I knew before was wrong, but I did learn little subtleties, kind of like you mentioned with Masada Youb's course, to where it did make me better understand even some of those basic techniques. And we had Ken Good on, who's a former Navy SEAL. He was actually the first director of training at the Surefire Institute back in the day. But, he's big on saying, dude, it's not just you learn these techniques. It's you have to understand the why behind it. You have to understand what technique works best in each situation. And, most cops in the academy, because low light training is such a small part of the academy, you don't get nearly as much of it as you need. And you find yourself, unfortunately, learning on the job, on the fly. Okay, we're responding to this alarm call at this business, and it's you and a couple dudes, and you're going to go in there and you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know, which is the scary part. But talk a little bit about what is the purpose of the Surefire Institute?
Great question. So we are on our 3.0 of Surefire Institute, and as in the past it has existed and gone away and has existed and gone away. The Surefire Institute today, we are basically attacking instructors, and we are attacking the bell curve of our instructors. Where can we do the most good with what we have? Myself and the director of training, Andy Stanford, we teach the live fire side of the house. I have a master coach class, which is an 8-hour class on how to be a better firearms instructor. And that class is really aimed towards, we talk about cops. Maybe if we got 10 cops show up for a class, all law enforcement, maybe 2 of those guys are gun guys and they're shooters, right? The other 8 of them are voluntold, they're in trouble, they shoot okay and they pass, and this is the billet that they have to fill.
Or it's a guy who's been there for a long time. Sorry to interrupt you. A guy that's been there a long time. I hate this. And they're like, hey, this guy's been writing a lot of tickets and making a lot of arrests. Let's make him a low light instructor. It's like, dude, this guy has no aptitude or no desire to succeed in that role. And I hate that when law enforcement administrators just throw someone in such a critical role like that. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I've seen things where agencies have excellent firearms instructors, right? And then where they're okay, and it's like another part of their job that they just have to do. But as a whole, how can we condense the best information, which is what we've done, and use some patented things that we have? And, we give credit to everybody where the drills come from and where they're through, because we believe in this stuff. This is where this comes from. We tell them why, and who did it. And we give them this information so that they have some tools to go back to their agency with, and that they might remember that they know how to fix this person's problem because of something they learned, right? And then now they can take this shooter or this law enforcement officer that can barely pass to passing, right? Or at least start to build the confidence in them. And that's the goal. I think that's where we can do the most good. And what I also teach is a block of low light instructor training. So basic low light techniques and how to use them and how to teach it, and the fundamentals of it. We offer those basically you can add the low light class to the master coach class, and make a 12-hour day out of it. We can do a small break. We
Very
also
cool.
have Chris Lepre and Phil Alva, which is on our law enforcement side, which is our force on force side of the house, is what we call it. We have a 2-day low light tactics instructor class. We just did a class down in Southern Arizona with Chris and Phil, and I assisted them on this, and it was a phenomenal class. Excellent class. We did some force on force in that. We do some room clearing in this and some open area searches, talk about the tools and the techniques, and give them the brain farting on you, excuse me, and give them the opportunity to see some of these things instead of like learn it real firsthand on the job. So
Yeah, no, I think that's great, man. When you add that force on force element, which there was when I went to the Surefire Institute as well, it kind of gives you some context. Okay, it's not just me doing this technique out on the range, which that's an important part of it, right? Because it's funny because when we do low light stuff and you do it like on a sunny day in Arizona, I'm in Arizona as well. I'm in Scottsdale area.
oh, right
So
on.
it's like,
Oh,
yeah, but it's like, dude, that's a step in the process. Like, because as an instructor, you can make sure people are being safe, that people aren't putting their light out and then crossing the muzzle of their offhand when they assume the Harry's technique, for instance. So it's like you have to train initially on the square range, get those techniques down in the light, and then what's really cool is when you are able to incorporate that, as you alluded to, in kind of force on force, and that just validates things. Either you did things the way you were taught and you probably had a good outcome, or you got hit with a simunition round and then it's probably was a little bit embarrassing,
mhm.
a little pride killer, but you take a deep breath and you learn from it and you try to apply the techniques and the tactics that you were learned appropriately the next time.
Absolutely. I think the lessons that are gained from that, and just from the general experience of going, getting the instruction, going through the exercise, what are the takeaways, and then having the teach backs to then take that and pass it later. You can't really get that, and it's just kind of like low light training in an academy is this much.
Yes.
So having 2 days of it is, you could spend a month on this subject, but 2 days of taking what Chris and Phil have developed, taking those two things, or taking what they can and applying it in 2 days. They have condensed the best material to be the most helpful.
Yeah, and it's crazy that low light is overlooked, CJ,
Oh
because
man,
there are so many, especially law enforcement, but even private citizen incidents happen at night. So I'm one of those dudes that I always have flashlights with me. We just went on vacation in Iceland, and this time of year in Iceland, like it never gets totally dark. And I have 4 flashlights with me in my bag, and my wife is like, "What are you doing? It doesn't even get dark." I'm thinking it gets dark in buildings, and you know what?
yes.
You have a nice Surefire handheld light, and guess what? That can also be on a plane or wherever else, non-permissive environments. Now you
Yeah.
have
Cool.
an emergency impact weapon. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So this like, there's no reason not
Yeah.
to have that with you.
No, absolutely. Having the tool, right, is better than not having the tool. Um, I'm big on weapon lights. Individuals that carry a weapon light that don't carry a handheld, even in civilian context, because I'm like, listen, like I can't pull my gun out, and my gun doesn't turn into a flashlight, right? It's not. That's called aggravated assault if you point that gun at somebody. And also, if you have a weapon out, maybe when you don't need to, and you're using it to search around, you're opening yourself up to a whole other list of problems. So you need to have a handheld to search with, at least,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah, CJ, I was on a scene one time investigating a shooting, and there was an officer there, and this officer, he was squared away in some regards, but not when it comes to firearms handling. He had a couple unintended discharges already at this point.
ooh,
And so he sees, I don't remember if it was a cell phone or what on the ground, but it's potentially a piece of evidence. What does he do? He takes his Glock out and with his weapon light illuminates that phone, and I'm like, oh, dude, do not shoot the only piece of evidence. You know what I mean? But that just goes to show you. I've seen, I think it was actually at the Surefire Institute when I took a class there. They showed a video, and this was not a spoof. This was a legit thing. They showed a cop directing traffic with his weapon light. It's like unbelievable, dude. But yeah, two different tasks, right? I mean, I'm a big fan of weapon lights too. And that's, some people are like, oh, no, because you're going to be muzzling things that you don't, want, that you shouldn't be muzzling. Well, guess what, bro? Any technique where the flashlight, handheld flashlight, is held in close proximity to the gun, you're doing the same thing. But there's ways you can avoid doing that, right? There's ways that you can angle the light, angle your muzzle to be able to still see without potentially muzzling someone that shouldn't be muzzled.
Yeah, I mean, totally. For me, I would rather have a weapon light than not, right? And there's a time to use it, right? And it doesn't become something I can search with as a civilian, but it can become something I can hunt with, right? But still understanding how to use the flashlight, whether you're splashing or umbrella, right? But above that, I'm going to have a handheld. Even if I had whatever situation this is, if I had a weapon out with a low ready, I'm still using a handheld to see where I'm at and keeping my gun in what Randy Watt, and also a gun sight instructor, calls a real world low ready, which for me is very low, and it just mitigates risk of being accused of something or making a mistake.
Randy Watt is such an awesome dude, man. I looked up to him as a young SWAT cop forever, and I took a course by one of my mentors, Dave Spalding, and Randy Watt was in the class, but I didn't realize that. Then halfway through the class, I'm like, you're Randy Watt. And I'm pretty sure I lost my concentration for the rest of the day, but what a good dude, man. Like he actually took a couple of my classes. I've taken a couple of his classes. Just a wealth of knowledge, man, both from the military and law enforcement side, and just a great human being as well. So very cool.
He's one of the most impressive men I've ever met, and such a humble and kind, loving soul. And he was my 499 instructor at Gunsight, and I got my expert from him. And I was trying my hardest not to boob, and I was like, "Oh my God, Randy Watt found me worthy." Who am I?
So cool, dude. So cool.
I have utmost respect for him, and there's something I take away from him every time I see him.
Absolutely. The Surefire Institute is a different entity than Surefire. So people might not understand that. So talk a little bit about Surefire versus the Surefire Institute.
Well, so Surefire Institute is owned by Surefire, so we're not split apart. Basically, John Matthews wanted to bring training back and into the world, and we figured out where we could, use our best talents and do the most good. So, which is on the emergence of Surefire Institute, which we're going to be about education and offering several classes. One I failed to mention for the low light, force on force for the LE side is a 5-day night vision tactics class.
Oh, very cool.
Taught by Chris Lepre and Phil as well. They're the instrucors on that.
Nice.
But so Surefire Institute, we're just training and education. We're a small branch extended out of the the giant that is Surefire. We use our tools in the classes, and we talk about the techniques of these things. But you don't have to have Surefire gear and equipment to attend our classes. You're going to see our stuff and maybe determine for yourself if it's the world's best. But I certainly was a Surefire believer before I ever got a job at Surefire. And if you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd be working for Surefire, I would have told you no way. And when I was a boot Marine, everybody wants the cool stuff, which is the Surefire stuff. And when you're the low man on the totem pole, you're saving all your money for beer and chicks on the weekends. And I should have been a little more responsible and tried to buy some good gear to go to go to Afghanistan with.
And just talk a little bit about Surefire products. So we just filmed. This hasn't even been released yet, but we did some filming. Guns and Ammo TV. Guns and Ammo. It's a sponsored personal defense digital video series that we filmed at the Smith & Wesson Academy. and Surefire was one of the sponsors, and so they equipped us with like the Stiletto 2 Pro,
Cool.
excellent handheld light, the brand new XC3 Sub, which is a pistol mounted light, which is phenomenal, as well as some Scout Pro Turbo Scout Pro carbine lights, basically. So I can't give a big enough endorsement for Surefire products. I mean,
Awesome.
it's doesn't get any better, and they have always served me very well. They're reliable, and when you combine that with the low light operating procedures that you learn from a place like the Surefire Institute, you're going to be set up, man. Because here's the thing: you can learn good low light protocol, right? But if you have a light that's going to fail you, you're still going to fail.
Yeah.
The flip side, you can have the best Surefire light in the world, but if you don't know how to use it, how much good is it to you?
100%. Right. So understanding tools, understanding the job they're used for, and understanding how to use them. Right. And you got to do those things. It's to employ it correctly.
Now, CJ, does the Surefire Institute have like a home base these days, or is it all taking the show on the road type of thing?
The show's on the road. The show's on the road. We do not have a home range or home base. All of the instructors are located here in Arizona. So we go to whoever needs us. As the training coordinator, I get a lot of law enforcement agencies or other agencies that reach out to us. And, as long as they have the required things that we need, we go to you and make it easy for you guys.
Very cool. I want to talk a little bit about red dots. Law enforcement is always kind of slow to adapt to things. And I think that law enforcement as a whole should have adopted red dot sights on pistols a decade before. And some agencies did, but like my agency that I retired from, they are just making that transition now. Talk a little bit about your experience with red dots on pistols.
So, first and foremost, a large majority of my red dots are Aimpoints.
Nice.
My everyday carry is a Glock 19. I just upgraded to the Gen 6, and I run the COA, and
Nice.
I love it. It is a great tool. But I can kind of tell you about, as an instructor, what I've seen dots do for folks. I think that if you have self-motivated students that are trying to learn, and other than just, load the gun, be safe with the gun, shoot and hit the target, but they're trying to precision shoot, the dot becomes a great tool for showing them, if they're aware of what they're doing with their hands or the gun, as it's happening in real time. So you're getting real-time feedback off of the optic. So if they are, if they are anticipating the trigger, but they are aware enough and they're seeing where their optic is doing, their dot is doing, then they can learn a little faster. The curve for marksmanship is not as big because of what the optic can do for their understanding of it. The other thing that I like is target focus, because they're going to stare at the target anyway. So now they can stare at the target, put the dot where it needs to go, and press the trigger, ideally without moving the gun, to get where it needs to be.
And would you agree, CJ, that if you are good enough, you become good enough with a red dot, that you're able to draw and present the pistol, and you're able to see the dot consistently?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of is proof that your drawn presentation is consistent,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to be beneficial even when you're using iron sights.
100%.
Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no secret, there's no esoteric information for using the dot, but for those that do carry the dot, you need to practice with the dot. And if you're just doing the dry practice and, working through backwards chaining, starting all the way out at the target, coming back, getting to the target again, coming back farther, and remaining disciplined in this to practice this, then getting your hand to the gun, getting the gun to the presentation point here, and then start to develop those skills that you will have the automaticity when you need it. And I would say that's where the curve is going to be. is in the presentation, picking up the dots sooner. But if you practice that backwards chaining, and a lot of people don't even know what that is. What is this backwards chaining thing?
Yeah.
The
That's a
average
foreign term. Yeah. Like myelination.
Right? The average person that's got the money to spend and wants the new coolest thing will go out and buy it. And I got this dot on this gun. And then they get out to the range and they might be hunting for this dot.
Yeah.
And there's a curve to getting the automaticity that's needed to pick up that dot as soon as possible to be able to use it. But man, if you master that, or continue the process of mastering that, everything becomes a lot quicker in the acquisition of the dot to be able to hit your target and precision. I find with a dot, I am punching holes. If I have a very good disciplined shooting day, punching holes through the center of a target.
And it cracks me up because people will say, well, you don't need it. Here's the justification. Most shootings 5 to 7 yards. You don't need it. Okay, well, a dot is not going to hurt you at this distance, right? At that distance, you're aiming virtually through body alignment. You're still aiming. It's not unaimed fire. It's unsighted fire, right? Because maybe you're in a position that you're so close that you can't bring the gun up in front of your eyes, because to do so would risk, having the bad guy grab your gun. So you're going to have that gun into your body in a retention position. But even in those retention positions, we have physical indexes that are helping to align our muzzle to the threat. And so there's no downside to using a dot. And the people that say a dot will make you slower, it's because I firmly believe this. I don't mean to be arrogant, because I'm not the world's best shooter by any means, but those are people who don't understand how to use the dot. If you know how to use the dot, it's not going to make you slower.
100%.
It's going to make you faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is speed with the dot, because I can take away what my eyes have to do, right? Unless, we talk about too with irons, you can get a flashlight picture. With really good irons, I can almost use them as a dot, but I'm also have to be aware where my rear sight is, right? But after about 15, I would say up to 10 yards, I can get away with that on the chest area. At 15 yards, I can still get away with that. But if I got to make a precision shot, into the deep brain, I have to sight focus right on the irons after that. I do think for those that carry dots, you need to absolutely have the ability to see your iron sights. And I think that, if you have the mindset and mentality of being a gunfighter, that you need to have your backup sights, you need to have proficiency in those also, and you also need to know how to use them. But I think with today's day and age on putting optics on guns, learn that, shorten the curve, then follow up with using irons and learn how to use those and understand them. Maybe take a day when you go to the range that you just run irons, right? Or half the time, make sure you're using the practice, make sure that there's whatever your goal is on performance is there for that. And how it works on the two different systems together, because they are not co-systemed.
Sure. So I want to get your take on something. A lot of people, they question whether or not having a bright light is going to wash out your dot. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a thing?
So washing out your dot is a thing, but also that comes down to the user and having the mindset of what time of day it is, where I might be going, and setting your optic up in a condition that will allow use of white light to not wash it out or wash it out as much, right? And obviously, if I went to a 10 by 10 room that was whitewashed and I'm using a light, it's going to take my visibility or the brightness of that dot. It's going to significantly reduce it. But if I set myself up in a position to where my optics set in a certain position that is going to be minimal or not at all, or I can use the white light in a way where I'm splashing or umbrella lighting in these conditions, that it doesn't really become a factor.
Yeah, I've experienced what you just explained, to where, it doesn't look as bright, the dot or the reticle, but I've never had it to where it was not visible. You know what I mean? And so, that's just something that you deal with. And the same rings true for going from, like a well-lit in Arizona, going outside, right? And then you're going inside, or vice versa. You may have to adjust the brightness of your reticle depending on the environment. And there are some, some people prefer an auto brightness for the red dot, and some people prefer to be able to do it manually. So yeah, I mean, I think that's good advice there. So
I think if I had to pick one, it's manual. And then you understand your lighting conditions, and you have to understand your eyeballs, right? And what is optimal for you in those conditions. I have had some other optics, not Aimpoints, that have that capability and technology in them. But if you don't read the manual and understand the manual and also how to employ and use those things, then it doesn't matter anyway, right? If you don't know how to use your own gear.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if I had to simplify everything to the lowest level so I could make my life easier, especially in a stressful situation, I'm a manual guy. Even though if I run switches on rifles and stuff, if I don't have to run switches, personally, if I could do everything analog, I will.
Same. Yeah. I like having, I mean, my AR that for home defense, I got a Surefire Turbo Scout on it. And I prefer that as well. But I grew up or came up in a time where, there was all kinds of cords and different things. And I just never liked any of that stuff. I just want, it's essentially like a handheld light that's attached. Very, there's a lot of thought that goes into where it's attached because, with a long gun, I see people that will have, like, let's say, I'm not many people probably running vertical foregrips anymore, but you're running a vertical foregrip like this, but to activate your light, you have to break your hold and do this. So it's like, when I teach that, which is not much these days, I teach more pistol stuff, but you got to grip your carbine in such a way that you can intuitively activate that light and that's one of the great things about Surefire products as well, is that you have the ability to really control that duration that you're illuminating. If a light only has click on and click off, that's not a tactical light, man. I mean, It's better than not having a light, arguably, but it's not what you're looking for in a tactical light.
Yeah, and I think that's important for consumers to understand what is a tactical light, right? It has to have tactile buttons. The switchology has to be set in a way that you can have pressured for on or a constant on, or there's just a simple on-off switch, and it needs to be simple. It needs to be simple, And some of these lights out there on the market that have, setting from low, medium to high to strobe to, that is not a tactical light.
Yeah.
You should
if it has multiple settings, the brightest setting needs to be first. I mean, you're not going to have time to be scrolling through stuff for sure.
No, right. Or understanding your equipment and being able to, it's like some of the lights we have, you can program from high to low or low to high first, right? And what are you using that tool for? Is it an admin function? You're sitting in your patrol car, you're doing something, you don't want the brightest light in the world at that point in time. Right. But now I have a designated light that I search with, and I want the highest high first, so understanding the environment and then employing the tool correctly for the job that you need it to do.
Yeah. Lighting technology has come so far. I became a cop in the mid to late 90s, and we had, pretty long flashlights, and they were, I'm not talking about Surefire, but it was another popular brand that's not bad, but it's, it would be very yellowish, the hue, and then now, I mean, you can get a light that you can conceal in your hand that's going to be so bright that you're going to probably have your adversary, flinching away, closing his eyes. It's definitely going to be we call it that force multiplier. So it's not just that you can see, it's that you're interfering with your adversary's ability to see.
As a private citizen,
there you go.
I carry handhelds. I carry a retention device. This is from Retention Ring. Wonderful guy, a great company, veteran, family-owned business. Met this guy at TACCon, and now I like his device because it's minimal and it's not in the way. But anyway, I run a handhelds, and the people call me a nerd for this, but as a self-defense guy and having levels of force, I carry the palm, I carry the pepper spray. Because not every job is a gun, or not every situation is a job for a gun.
Yep. Absolutely.
And beyond that, I'm tourniquets and weeds. bleeder
Well, dude,
kits.
at 6'6", bro, you got a lot of room. You got a lot of room. You could have a full-size med kit on you somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I carry a Glock 19 or a Glock 48, which isn't the world's biggest guns, but there's pros and cons to life and being this big. The con is finding clothes, but the pro is I can hide a lot of shit in them.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome.
And so I am grateful for that.
CJ, as we wind down here, brother, tell people where they can go to find out about the Surefire Institute, and also plug your own, if you don't mind, social media platforms and stuff where people can find what you're up to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So surefire.com, on the menu tab, if you scroll down in lettering, it says Surefire Institute. If you click on that, it will take you over to everything that we're doing. There you can find our instructor bios. You can find our mission and what we're about. You can find our classes and how to inquire for those classes. I will make a brief digression, is that our classes are designated law enforcement, but for the my side of the house, for the live fire, for the master coach, and the intro to low light class, if a reputable range wants to reach out to us and host that for civilian instructors, we will also take care of those folks. I don't want to neglect them either, because that stuff does matter, and in making the world a better and a safer place.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so, and then me, I'm pretty simple. I have just Instagram and a Facebook. It's just CJ Cowan, and my Instagram is CJ_Cowan_.
Great. Well, CJ, thank you so much, man. I loved our conversation. I'm pretty sure that our viewers and listeners are going to like it too, and hopefully they got something out of it, man. We're only a few hours away, so hopefully we can share a range together one of these days, brother. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I can learn from you. Thank you so much for being part of the show today.
Hey, thank you for your time, and thanks for having me on.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode with CJ Cowan. If this episode resonated with you, be sure and let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Aimpoint's Taking Aim podcast. We'll see you next time.